David Cameron is heading for a crucial summit in Brussels. Top of the agenda for the British Prime Minister will be the terms of UK membership of the European Union and a renegotiation of those terms. Janan, how is he going to be received? Because he's looking for changing the terms of British membership. He's got a lot of requests, but for the leaders themselves, they're overwhelmed with the migrant crisis and the terrorist threat.
Yeah, I think he'll be received with some suspicion, actually. There are existential issues on the minds of continental European leaders, terror, whether Schengen will last more than a few years. And to receive a British Prime Minister who's talking to them about child benefit entitlements and tax credit entitlements, the duration of how long someone can claim, very technocratic welfare issues, will jar, I think, with a lot of those leaders.
And there is a fundamental dilemma, isn't there, for the Prime Minister as well as his counterparts, which is for Mr. Cameron, he's looking to a domestic constituency ahead of a referendum likely to take place in 2016 or maybe 17.
Yeah, he has 4 themes that he wants to renegotiate on when it comes to British membership. So there is protecting non-Eurozone countries within the EU, so they don't just become a rubber stamp for decisions taken by the Eurozone. There's greater democratic accountability, there's competitiveness, and then there's a really vexed issue in this country of immigration and whether you can limit it in some form by tweaking welfare entitlements. And the dilemma that you allude to is that the theme that is most important to this country's strategic interests, which is protecting non-Eurozone countries, is not the theme that plays best with the public, which is actually immigration and free movement. So the diplomatic interest points in one direction and the naked political interest points in the other direction. And reconciling those two things is his challenge, not just at the dinner, but really over the subsequent months of negotiation.
And of course, in terms of discrimination, top of the agenda for Mr. Cameron is the City of London, its status, and trying to protect it against discrimination on, say, bankers' bonuses directives or financial services legislation. But you're not going to win a referendum by defending bankers' interests.
No, exactly. And I think a lot of people in European capitals know that and will therefore be less inclined to give something to David Cameron because they can see how the domestic politics will play out. In many ways, the banking example should give him some cause for optimism in that the government has already negotiated in recent years things like double majority voting when it comes to areas of banking policy, which is sort of a prototype version of what protection for a non-Eurozone country might look like.
So double majority voting means you've got to get a lot more countries to vote on one side rather than just being a narrow majority, ins and outs.
Yeah, specifically, in order to get a banking policy through, right, the EU needs a majority, not just in the Eurozone, but in non-Eurozone countries.
So if what about the bit of theatre? I mean, is Mr. Cameron going to have a row with Mr. Hollande, or can he beat up the Bulgarians? Is that something like that going to happen?
I think in order to sell a deal to his own party, never mind the public, he absolutely needs a big, visible fight with Europe. He needs to be seen to be quite aggressive. Otherwise, if he comes back too early and the deal looks like it was perfunctory and almost too smooth, every Tory backbencher who is inclined to vote out will say, what a cop-out, you didn't even try, there wasn't any friction. And I think a good number of voters will think that as well. So he needs sparks to fly.
And here's the white rabbit that you pulled out of the hat, Janan, this week, was that actually people shouldn't be so worried about people voting to leave the European Union in Britain. Yeah. Their fears are exaggerated. Why is that?
Well, I think that there's a lot of the consensus in business and I suppose in diplomatic circles is that this country will vote to leave because of an emotional spasm. They'll decide they don't like domestic elites, big business, the government itself, and almost out of pique, they will take a massive existential decision to leave. And my view is if they leave or vote to leave, it won't be for an emotional reason. People might vent at a local election or a European Parliament election, but when it comes to choosing a government, when it comes to choosing something existential in a referendum, they always operate in a much more cold-blooded way than I think British elites are willing to give them credit for. So I'm not ruling out the possibility that British voters elect to leave the European Union, but it won't be done on a purely emotional and irrational basis.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.